Today, I FD up by telling my parents they were not allowed to have sex under my roof. My parents spent the week with me. It was something the two of them planned to do since I moved out and continued my life in another country. My mom and dad refused to let me arrange a hotel room for them. They wanted to be closer to me, as in, spare bedroom closer. I agreed to let them use the spare bedroom in my apartment on one condition: no sex under my roof. I decided to drop that line as my mom and dad were unpacking their bags. The look on my parents' faces were priceless. I reminded them of the no sex under our roof rule I was forced to follow while living with them as a horny teenager who had equally horny girlfriends. My dad looked at my mom and said, "You heard her, son, honey, no hooking up in his house." All those years of fucking anywhere except for my room where it was comfortable and safe and somewhat private had brought me to this moment where I could have payback on the people who put me in that position. My payback backfired the following day when I was driving my parents to all the tourist attractions. Towards the end of the tour, my mom used the GPS on her phone to locate the nearest sex shop. She insisted that I drive her to the sex shop so she could stock up on sex toys. Hearing the words sex toys come out of my mom's mouth made me want to fill my ear holes with wet cement and bleach my brain. I looked at my dad for help, but he just shrugged and said, "You banned me from boning your mother, so now she's doing what she needs to do to get the job done without breaking the rules." I encouraged my mom to forget about the fucking sex shop and pretend that I never said anything about not allowing sex in my apartment. My mom said rules are rules and persisted that I drive to the sex shop, which I reluctantly ended up doing. Both my parents got out of the car, whereas I did what probably most sons and daughters would do in that situation, which was wait the car and contemplate my life choices. My parents returned with more than enough bags for one person, hence my dad telling me that he found a few things he could use too. I made it clear to both my mom and dad that I never wanted to know what was in those bags. What made the situation even more awkward for me was walking to my apartment with my parents who were carrying bags that were covered in branding that made it obvious as fuck where my mom and dad were shopping. It was an uncomfortable and embarrassing experience crossing paths with some of the residents who knew me because I noticed them noticing the bags filled with sex toys that my unashamed mom and dad made no effort to hide in public. Since my parents returned home yesterday, I found a tongue vibrator under the bed in the spare bedroom and a prostate massager inside the bathrobe my dad forgot to pack. I made the mistake of informing my parents about it, and now my dad is expecting me to somehow ship that shit to him. Sigh. TLDR. Asterisk, my parents visited me for a few days. In an attempt to get back at them for not allowing me to have sex in their house when I was younger, I decided to enforce a similar restriction and prohibit them from sleeping with each other under my roof. What I thought was a taste of their own medicine turned into my parents forcing me to drive them to a sex shop to stock up an absurd amount of sex toys for them to use under my roof without breaking the rules. I've been finding used sex toys in my apartment ever since. Asterisk. Try to drug and rape an innocent girl at a party? No. Not while I'm here. So, to put it simply, I was a little shit as a kid. I used to steal from stores and family, swear and throw things at random people walking down the street, was smoking from the age of 12 and didn't give a shit about anyone but my friends. They were my real family, or so I thought, and the group of all 5 of us would cause trouble every single fucking day. My parents, though in my later years have told me they should have been more effective in their discipline, really weren't to blame. I was just a mixed-up kid. I used to think that doing all this stuff made me cool. I can't really describe how superior I felt when I made grown adults afraid of me, but it made me feel powerful, and power was something I craved when I was younger. I could go on and on about my sins, but the fact is, I was just fucked in the head. I've made amends where I can to who I could, but you're not here for self-flagellation, you're here for the revenge. So long story short, when I was 16, my parents finally had enough, and despite all my tantrums and screaming and even some physical violence against my dad, they decided to put me in a school for troubled youth. I call it a school, but what it really was a military institution that taught discipline in the most brutally effective ways while throwing in some literacy and numeracy classes along the way. Without going into too much detail, I'll say that the school changed me. While aggressive, violent, cocky, and near homicidal when I was first dumped on their doorstep, the men who ran this camp broke me down. I was there for just over a year. No phone calls, no visits home, no access to the outside world. For one whole year, I had this camp and these counselors, these real-life hard-ass men teach me just how much of a shit stain I really was. By the end of my second summer, I was a changed kid. I had fought and screamed and gotten my ass kicked more times than I can count, but eventually I was beaten down. These men taught me that real men simply don't act the way I did and that the type of path I was headed down would lead me either in jail or dead. They were brutally honest about it, especially this one counselor Jay. By the end of my stay, I considered Jay a second father. Though I hated him at first for making me feel inferior, he really did me a favor teaching me how toxic my behavior was, and to this day I still think of him as something of a hero. He was the main person who deemed me ready to return home. But the backstory is getting really long, so let's get to the real story. When I returned home, I had changed from an abusive little prick to a somewhat civilized young man, ready to take on my last year of high school. I was nervous to go back since I had adapted to the disciplinary school lifestyle, but I was also excited. I missed my friends and hoped they would just accept me back despite the fact that I hadn't spoken to any of them in over a year. And to my relief, I was accepted back with open arms. One of my closest friends had moved states since I'd been away, but the other three were ecstatic to see me. Over the next few weeks I settled down. I didn't spend a lot of time with them outside of school. My parents were kind of testing how much I'd matured since returning and were setting boundaries on when I could go out, how long I could stay out, and where I could go, etc. I was determined to prove to them I wasn't the same fuck-up that had ruined their lives all those years, so I followed their rules and so only really talked to my friends during school. All of this is relevant because of what happened next. I had joined the school football team all three friends were a part of, and one evening after practice, all my teammates were in the gym, sweaty and dirty but pleased with ourselves. I was laughing and chatting with my three best friends so much I didn't really notice that we were the last left in the gym. But that's when the conversation started turning bad. One of my friends, I'll call him F1, friend 1, for simplicity, started telling me about a college party they were all planning on going to and how they'd been crashing college parties for a few months now since it was easy access to girls and booze. I was hesitant about it because I didn't think my mom and dad would agree to let me go, but then F1 started talking about this girl he was planning on inviting. A girl who went to the same school as us, but not one I thought F1 had any real relationship with. I knew her, but I didn't know her. He started to tell both my other friends and me that he'd been trying to get her into bed for a while and she kept making excuses, so he planned on taking her to the party and finally smashing. When I asked him, in a joking way, what makes you so sure she won't reject you again? He looked me dead in the eye and said as casually as you please, the most chilling sentence I have ever heard in my entire life. I'm just gonna slip something in her drink. It'll loosen her up, no problem. At first I just kind of awkwardly laughed, thinking it was some fucked up joke, but they weren't laughing with me. When I asked him if he was serious, he told me he was sick of her bullshit games and knew she was just stringing him along and that the pills would just make things easier. I could not believe my fucking ears. I excused myself from the conversation pretty quickly and practically bolted home, most likely driving through several stop signs, but I really don't remember. I spent the whole night convincing myself my friends were just messing around. A few more days pass and the conversation in the locker room is all but forgotten, though they hadn't shut up about the party and kept insisting that I just sneak out and join them. I got called a pussy repeatedly for telling them I wasn't going because of my parents, but again, I just brushed it off. Then the shit finally hits the fan. During yet another after-school training session, we all end up the last in the lockers. And F1 does something I never would have expected in 1,000 fucking years. All three of them have been talking about the party this whole time, then F1 starts rummaging through his gym bag. He tells us all to look at this and tosses F2 a small bag of little pink pills. Immediately, I feel the blood drain from my face and like a bomb's going off in my head, a voice in my mind is screaming, holy shit, this is really happening, this is serious, holy fucking shit. It's really hard to describe what I was feeling when F1 started going into detail about how he planned on inviting the girl to the party, slipping something into her drink, and making use of one of the frat boys' bedrooms for a few hours. I was sick. Like literally could have hurled everything from my stomach all over the floor as I listened to all three of them talk about how awesome the party was going to be after just describing how they were planning to rape a girl. I couldn't take it and again I ran off. I actually did end up puking later that night, going over and over in my head what the fuck I had just witnessed. I almost couldn't believe it. These three boys had been my friends for 15 years. I thought of them as my own family, thought I knew them better than anyone, but 1 year away and this. I'll tell you that I actually broke down crying that night. I'm not ashamed to admit it. What I am ashamed of is how long I took to actually get a grip and handle it. I knew I should have told someone, but in some fucked up way my loyalties were still screwed. Don't crucify me for it, I know now what I should have done, but I was 17 and these were my best friends. I didn't want them to get into trouble, but at the same time I knew I couldn't let this shit go down, so instead of reporting all I'd heard to an adult like a normal fucking person, I decided I'd sort it out all on my own. So I went to F1 and told him not to do what he had planned. Told him it was stupid and dangerous and would ruin both his life and the life of the girl he was planning on drugging. He didn't even blink. He got right in my face and told me that the school I got sent to had turned me into a pussy. That he hated how much I'd changed and had been trying to change me back with F2 and F3. Even told me how they'd been talking about me behind my back and how they'd planned to give me a turn on the girl once F1 was done with her, just to show me what I was missing out on. Then he said something I'll never forget. He told me word for word, "I'm doing that little bitch a favor. She's a fucking virgin. And after this party, your mum won't be the only one finally getting some." I punched him. We fought and we both got sent home on suspension for fighting. I could not fucking believe it. I was seething. My best friend had said that to me. My best friend had told me he was going to rape an innocent girl at a party and I was a pussy for not wanting to join in. I was disgusted, sickened to my core, and I was done with him. My parents were disappointed I had gotten suspended so shortly after coming home, but I just sat quietly while my mom cried and my dad screamed at me. I know now that I should have told him, but after what F1 said to me, I had this insane notion in my head that I was going to get him back all on my own. And now to the revenge. After a weekend of being grounded, I went back to school and the first thing I did was seek out F1. He was about as bashed up as I was, but he was sporting a nice black eye from where I'd hit him in the face. F2 and F3 were standing with him and they all glared at me as I approached them. Then I did something that made me feel sick. I apologized to him. I told him I was sorry I hit him and that he was right, I had changed, and I hated what that school had done to me and I wanted to go back to being the old me again, and surprisingly, they all bought it. F1 and I even hugged it out and I put the cherry on top when I told them I'd be coming to the party. Now for my dumbass teenage plan. First, I started recording them whenever we were alone together. I wanted to get everything they said about the party and the girl they were planning on victimizing on tape. I knew I needed some kind of proof or it would just be my word against theirs. And after a few days, I had gotten more than enough. But I wasn't done. No, my stupid self had a plan and I was going to fulfill it to the fullest. So the next thing I did was track down the girl, take her aside, and tell her everything. She was pissed and scared, but I begged her not to go to the police or tell anyone. I know now that was stupid as well, but for some reason she listened to me. I had a plan. A crazy, stupid plan to teach them all a lesson. So I told her to tell F1 that she was going to meet him at the party, but to just stay home so she could stay safe. Later that day, F1 started bragging about how the girl had accepted his invitation and everything was going to plan. And I sat there, phone half out my pocket, recording the whole damn thing. So night of the party finally rolls around and I sneak out because, I was grounded. I think it's worth mentioning that I wasn't filled with vindication and self-righteousness throughout the whole night. I was second-guessing myself, I had doubts, but in some strange way, I felt betrayed. These three boys had been my brothers since before I could throw a punch and I felt betrayed that they had gone down this road. What fucked me in the head even more was the possibility that I might have been just like them if my parents hadn't sent me away. It was a strange moment of realization to come to in the middle of a crowded frat house surrounded by drunk idiots, but you take what life throws at you. So the night goes on and F1 is getting steadily more frustrated that the girl he invited hadn't shown up. I'd made sure to keep him in my sights for the whole night, not wanting him to decide that any old girl would do if he couldn't take the one he wanted. I kept an eye on all of them, watching as they drank and drank while I stayed as level-headed as possible with some water in a beer can. When midnight came, all three of them were plastered and I knew that all the girls at the party would be safe by then. By this time, the crowd was dying down and a few people who couldn't hold their liquor were already passed out around the house. And now was my time to shine. While all three of them were occupied with a drinking game, I hunted in F1's bag and found the bag of little pink pills. Here's where I did something I'm not particularly proud of, but I'll tell you anyway. I slipped one pill into 3 beers each and handed them to my friends and then waited. It didn't take long before all 3 were passed out on the floor, along with quite a few other party guests. I then took out a black permanent marker pen from my bag and wrote "rapist" on all 3 of their foreheads, took pictures and immediately uploaded them to our school's Facebook page so everyone who attended our school would see. Admittedly, I didn't really think this part through since I not only did this in full view of every other conscious person at the party, but also knew the photos wouldn't last long on the school site before they would be taken down. But since it was a small school in a small town, I didn't doubt that a whole bunch of people would see it before a teacher removed the photos, and that's exactly what I wanted. Next came the recordings. When I got home, I got a verbal bludgeoning from my parents for sneaking out, but they stopped when I finally told them what had been happening. They were both shocked and a little disbelieving, but when I played them both the recordings I'd saved on my phone, they were just as sickened as I was. I was silent in the car as my dad drove me to the police station, receiving a lecture about how I should have just come to him in the first place and what I'd done at the party wasn't necessary. But I felt like it was at the time. My phone had already blown up with other students commenting on the pictures of my 3 ex-friends with "rapist" written on their foreheads. And while a lot just laughed at them, many were questioning if there was any truth to it. It was what I wanted. I wanted everyone to know who they really were, so they had nowhere to hide. The hours at the police station were admittedly very scary. I was still debating with myself whether or not I did the right thing, but my friends had chosen their own fate. I still felt hurt and betrayed they'd allowed themselves to become this way, and even though I felt a little guilt for potentially ruining their future, I did what I thought had to be done. And long story short, the recordings were enough to get them all on charges of planning to commit a crime. Since the girl F1 had been planning on drugging had been named, her parents were understandably furious and demanded all 3 of my ex-friends be arrested. I would have been too were it not for the girl telling her parents and the courts that I had warned her to stay away from F1 and the party. I was charged for my use of an illegal substance since I admitted to using the pills on my 3 ex-friends, and also for battery since the permanent marker was seen as a form of assault, but luckily I never got jail time. I did get a boatload of community service though. All 3 of them were tried as adults in a case of attempted rape, but only F1 got actual jail time since he was the one who'd gotten the pills and was the only one who admitted to wanting to use them. The other 2 only got probation and community service for being accessories, but were completely shunned in our town. No one ever let them forget. I was prepared for the backlash, ready to be jumped by them or something, but strangely enough, I think seeing F1 go to jail for what he did knocked some sense into the 2 of them, and they wised up enough to actually get into college without football scholarships, since they were both kicked off the team. They never came anywhere near me again, which surprised me, but I no longer cared. In my mind, my friends were dead to me long before all of this went down, and by the time I moved away to college, it was all behind me. I'm in my final year of college now, and I still think about those 3 sometimes. I think about how if my parents hadn't sent me to that special school, I may have ended up just like them. Oddly enough, I do miss them at times, but I know it's the memory of the kids I miss, not the men they turned into. I thanked my parents continuously for sending me to that place, and even got some approval from Jay when I felt man enough to tell him what happened. I don't know what will happen to F1 when he gets out of jail, but a part of me hopes he learns his lesson and moves on with his life, like I have. Jay called me a few days ago just to check up, and I told him this whole story, which is kind of why I'm now telling the internet. Today I ducked up thinking I was actually gonna do a good job during a threesome. First of all, fuck. Yes. A threesome was never something I expected to experience, but somehow I became the prime candidate to sleep with 2 girls who could have chosen anyone else. Now, in case you think I look like Timothée Chalamet, I do not. I was friends with one of the girls, and she told me on more than one occasion that she wanted to share her girlfriend with a guy. She said her girlfriend actually put the idea in her head, and she never stopped thinking about how hot that might be. Our conversations regarding the threesome would always end the same way. She would ask me what I thought, I would encourage her to set boundaries, then she would ask me if I had any guys in mind. And then I would share names of single guys in my social circle that I knew were popular with girls. Cut to New Year's Eve. I was at a rooftop party when my friend approached me with her girlfriend. My friend said she ran out of signs and hints, so now she was finally gonna spell it out for me. What she spelled out was the following: I was the guy and I've always been the guy she wanted to have a threesome with. She said she thought she was being as obvious as possible during all our threesome conversations, but she eventually realized I was oblivious as fuck. My friend's girlfriend confirmed what my friend was saying and added that the 2 of them were willing to skip the countdown to 2024 and jump into bed with me at that moment. I had so many questions, and my friend agreed to answer all of them if I followed her and her girlfriend to the Uber that was apparently gonna take us to their apartment. I let the girls lead the way. On our way to the apartment, my friend explained the boundaries. She was sitting in the back of the Uber with her girlfriend while I was sitting next to the driver, who looked as uncomfortable as I was feeling during that discussion. The fact that the driver was playing gospel music and low-key turning up the volume when he thought none of us noticed made the drive even more awkward, at least for me. For the record, I don't think I was drunk, but I had enough alcohol in my system to defuse some of my anxiety when we entered the apartment. At that point, the three of us kind of knew what to do and what not to do based on the boundaries we touched on in the car. Cue kissing, touching, undressing, and my inhaler. My lungs attempted to cockblock me with an asthma attack. I used my inhaler and assured the girls that it was no big deal, which was true, and that we could continue, which we did. Cue bra straps unhooking, panties dropping, intense kissing, aggressive touching, and premature ejaculation. I apologized to the girls and blamed my orgasm on overstimulation. I promised them that my erection would return when the time came, but until then, my plan was to please both of them without my penis. My friend's girlfriend said she was a pro at pleasing my friend with no penises in the picture before she actually showed me how much of a pro she was at oral. I knew I had to make sure I'm hard again soon, otherwise my presence kind of defeated the purpose, so I vigorously stroked my flaccid penis while going down on the girlfriend from behind while she was going down on my friend. I was unable to get hard again. The girls took turns playing with my penis, but nothing worked. It was embarrassing. I apologized. My friend said that she should be the one apologizing because of the way she pulled me into this threesome situation without leaving with me room to breathe and come prepared. In spite of my failure to get it up, the best part of the night for me was cuddling with two naked girls and falling asleep together. However, I managed to fuck that up too because when I woke up, both girls were sleeping in another room. When I eventually asked them mid-breakfast what made them switch beds in the middle of the night, my girlfriend's friend gave me the unsugar-coated version and said I freaked them out because I not only sleep with my eyes wide open, but apparently I also spell random words in my sleep. Let this be a warning to all you kinky people who enjoy group sex. I'm not the guy. You can do better. TLDR threesome with two girls fell into my lap and I fucked it up because I suck at breathing, I suck at orgasms, I suck at getting it up, and to top it off, I also suck at sleeping. Today I effed up by sticking up a metal vibrator up my ass. This happened yesterday, but I spent that one worrying about the fate of my precious butte hole instead of wondering how much Reddit karma I can get for this. But because I have no other options, I decided all I have left is the sympathy of strangers and my own story to comfort me. So I had tried anal stuff in the past. Not with much success, and it was always only. I'd just try sticking up a finger or two up my tube and it would never go very far. I'd usually just accept that I was not ready for anything more today and I'd stop. However, yesterday I decided to finally try again after watching some gay porn. I had always wanted to do more and decided tonight was the night. I got some lotion and did my usual ritual of sticking in one finger and then two. That day though, I was having much more success. I was able to push them in much farther and even could fit three. I wanted to use toys as that's always something I had fantasized about. Well, the only toy I had was a metal vibrator that was about 3 to 4 inches long and not too wide. I still wanted to try it and I was having success at first. I would just push it in and out as you do. Well, eventually I pushed in nearly all the way but saved a tiny bit I could grab onto and use to slide it back out. However, my butt had other plans and sucked it up. At first, because I was turned on, I thought nothing of it and masturbated. However, I realized there was a problem shortly after. I shoved my fingers back up to grab at it and at first I could. But because the end of it was hollow, since it's supposed to be attached to a second part that has the battery that causes it to vibrate, I couldn't easily grab onto it. So every time I got close and attempted to grab it, it pushed deeper in. Eventually, I couldn't even find it anymore. This was very worrying and I quickly ran to my bathroom. For context, I live with my mom and grandfather. I tried pushing it out and grabbing it again, and because this subreddit doesn't allow descriptions of bodily fluids, specifically shit, I cannot get into the specifics. Just know this only fueled to the worry, and even after pushing for about 20 minutes nothing came out. Wait, subscribe for more stories. Now back to the story. I finally chose to go to sleep and hope it'd expel itself naturally. But today I woke up with no vibrator, but I did have an odd rumbling in my stomach and a weird fuzzy feeling near my back pipe. I cannot go to the doctor as my parents are religious and I'd genuinely rather die than tell them why I needed them to drive me to the hospital. If I die, at least I'll have a legacy to remember of being that one guy who shoved a metal vibrator up himself. I F up by sharing my feelings to my best friend. Yeah, I've 34M been in love with my 32F best friend for the best part of a decade. I've been her friend for 10 years now. It all started when I got dumped by my first real girlfriend. A 7 years relationship going down the drain and I needed to flush it all out with a good alcohol wash. It was starting to be late during a weeknight and the only person who was still up in my Facebook friend list was her. She was a clerk at a convenience store near my place, and we never really talked outside really. I took my chance, told her I really needed to get drunk this night, and by chance, she also had a rough day and needed the stress relief. She wasn't even my type to begin with. A bit taller than me, I'm kinda short, 5 feet 7 inches, blonde, a bit too girly for me, but hey, I was mainly there to forget, and she seemed like someone I could have fun with. I was right. Super funny, interested in what I had to say, smart, both feet on the ground. The night went by super smoothly. We both went to her place and fell asleep cuddling each other. She even laughed the next day when I had to puke on the side of the road. She gave me a lift. I was way too drunk to drive. That was it. A good start to a nice friendship, but really though, it wasn't one. I didn't ask for this, nor did I plan to feel this way, but man, she was like a sunshine shredding through my darkness. She made me feel whole when I needed it the most, and the feelings I had for her started to crawl under my skin day by day. Back then, she was with some dork who didn't really love her to begin with. She started to be closer and closer to me, but still really loved him. There was a sexual tension between us sprouting more, and I'm ashamed to say this, but I took the opportunity and went all out. This is my first F-up. Sex was great, I can't deny that. Even the best I ever had, to be frank. She matched my energy, what can I say? But she still loved the other dude, and man was I falling hard for her after that. Weeks went by, then months, our little show still ongoing, until she decided to dump him. I was both relieved and stressed about the situation because I really didn't know how to approach her. She was hurt, needed me, but at the same time she had to free herself from an abusive relationship and try to refocus on herself. And the only thing she did to do it was back then was to meet as much people as possible to forget him. My second F-up was to stay there and say nothing. I've let her talk about all of the man she met and F-ed without saying a goddamn word. I should have just walked away, grieve and move on, but hey, love is blind. I finally overcome my sadness by meeting a super sweet girl who was a bit older than me. Super funny, had a strong heart, and was super gorgeous. Like, that girl was my ideal type. Curly red hairs, freckles in her face, her collarbones and shoulders a bit smaller than. She was a tomboy, was always wearing jeans and was working as a welder. She even loved the same music as I did. It was love at first sight. We immediately clicked and got serious fairly quick. She knew about my best friend and my proximity with her and didn't mind. My third F-up was to never set any boundaries with my friend during this relationship. She liked my new girlfriend but didn't like the attention I gave her. She had the sensation she lost the attention I had for her and multiplied it by tenfold for my new girlfriend. I brushed it away as mild jailhousey, but I guess it was more than that. Man, I'm not proud of all this. She started getting more and more flirty with me, a bit kinky when my girlfriend wasn't around, and ultimately, you guessed it, I couldn't resist and did the unthinkable with her. I'm pretty much certain my girlfriend knew at some point I cheated on her with my best friend because she one day dumped me out of the blue without any explanation. I was sad for a bit, but I deserved it 100%. I thought I had my chances back with my friend, but hey, let's keep this a tradition. She found someone else not long after. At this point in my life, I got physically hurt. Injured myself while working, hitting my neck and my back badly, and had to stop working for a good while, almost 8 years and counting now. I was still in love with my best friend but was too much a coward to tell her, yet again, because she had found someone new and I didn't want to lose her. My social circle went super small after my accident, so I needed a win here. I've kind of forget about being with her, even more when she married him a year after they started dating. But I couldn't move on. I was so stuck in the self-destructive loop of me being hurt badly, feeling unwanted, crippled, and yet hoping for her to wake up and see how much I loved her that I practically stopped existing at this point. I was there for her when she needed help with her shop, when she felt bad about school or about her relationship, and I was desperate for a bit of attention on my end. I mean, the sexual tension and proximity between us was still there, but I didn't want to take a step this time. I didn't want to ruin a marriage, especially my best friend relationship. I dug a hole and went silent about it for years, man. I'm writing this up right now and I feel such like an idiot. I'm sorry, this is dragging a bit here, but you had to know the full extent of our friendship to understand why I F up for the last time yesterday. She decided to end her marriage a couple months ago. Her husband was sick and didn't want to help himself. She tried as much as she could to help him out by finding solutions, but nothing sticked. He was abusing meds and drinking to the point of being borderline violent. That's when she decided it was enough, but hey, she loved the guy. She's naive but still loved the guy. So I did my job as a friend and tried to support her as much as I could. Calming her anxiety, trying to cheer her up when she felt super sad. She's now living a bit far from home and I can't drive, so I have her moral support. She also always avoided coming to my place for more than 15 minutes for the past 5 years, which I found weird AF and a bit rude, but I was also getting better myself. I've lost weight, got back some of my confidence, got back a bit of a need for life, you know? 6 months later, now she's feeling a bit better. She still said from time to time that she miss him but started to show interest in life again. She also started seeing people, just flings, for the sake of it and to tease me back again. That's when I started FNG up again. Man, I've started complaining she never had a single second to come see me, not even when she was single again. For that part, it's true. She's my best friend, but she didn't even took the chance to take a coffee with me in 5 years, and that I was hurt about it. She told me she was still figuring out her life and that she did not have any spare time, not even for herself. That's when everything went out. The whole story, my friends, served on a platter for her to enjoy to its full extent. She went radio silent for a while until a couple days ago when everything went back like nothing happened. So yeah, yesterday I decided I had enough and asked her what we were exactly. Last F up in the saga. I really didn't like the answer. She was confused because she had recently met someone she liked to the point of probably being exclusive to him for the time being. I just couldn't anymore. I've been suffering for the past 10 years and I had to add a coat on top of all this. I knew it was already going in this direction and I still stood there like an idiot. I had to do something, so I did what I could do best right now. I chose myself. I thanked her for the good stuff that happened during the last decade. It wasn't all bad moments, told her I couldn't keep up with this anymore and that I wasn't angry nor disappointed. She had the right to live her life the way she wanted, with who she wanted and at the pace she wanted, but so did I. I wished her the best of luck and completely erased her from my life. It sucks. Really bad. I'm hurt to the point of being on the verge to throw up because I know I can't get back from this. Something broke between us and I've probably lost her forever. What other choice did I had? Edit, I have to clarify certain things here before it gets out of hand. I was kinda overwhelmed when I wrote this to Fu since I have nobody to talk to currently and needed to vent out. I forgot to write certain key factors that need to be said. She knew I loved her back then and she also knew I had still strong feelings for her today. When she dumped her first boyfriend 10 years ago, I tried to make a move and was met with a refusal. She wanted me, she just didn't want to commit herself in a serious relationship. I should have stopped there and move on, but like I said, I was in love. I tried to get back in the game and flirt with other gals, but it just didn't stick with me. I've dialed back down on this part when she got married and stopped flirting with her until recently. Also, about the coffee part, it's more complicated than this. I've been inviting her to all sorts of events and party in the past 5 years, before and after COVID mainly, and I've always been greeted with excuses as to why she couldn't make it. I'd be okay about the part where she was still married since he could be a bit overwhelming to deal with, but after 6 months as a single person going out and having fun with a bunch of other people, it kinda felt awkward for me, her best friend, to be left out each and every single time. That's when I started getting a bit bummed about this whole situation. Lastly, I've told her about my surging emotions 2 weeks ago. I know she wanted to be free and just have fun with random dudes, and at this point, I've told myself, what's a couple more weeks over waiting 10 years to get a chance? The only thing I've asked her was to give me a chance if she felt the need to have something more than casual with someone. It happened not with me. I was fed up. I asked her the question that led me here writing this post. And yeah, I also feel bad for the girl I was dating back then. I'm really not sure if she knew about it, but either way, I couldn't stay with her after that, no matter what. TLDR, I had to erase my best friend from my life because I was too much a coward to tell her how I felt about her for the past decade until it was already too late. Today I F up by sending my roommate's friend into a bad mushroom trip through a song. Obligatory, this actually happened a month ago. My roommate and I like to indulge in mushrooms here and there. A couple days before the college semester started, my roommate decided to bring his 4 friends from home up to try mushrooms with us. It's important to note that 2 of them are semi-experienced trippers and the other 2 are brand new. My roommate and I are still the most experienced out of the bunch, so we each take 2.5 g, forget the strain, but it wasn't P, and everyone else takes 1.5 g to get the same experience as each other. Our first fuck-up was not finding a trip sitter, as me and my roommate didn't have one our first time and we were fine. So we take the mushrooms and walk to get takeout Chinese for later that night. I ate a hot dog right before that was making me sick to my stomach as I was coming up, and one of the new friends, we'll call him Sam, was feeling the same. I knew we were in for a ride when I start seeing hieroglyphics only 45 minutes in. I can't trip without listening to music or some sort, so when we get back to the apartment, I ask if music was okay. Everyone agrees, so I put on my hipster indie rock playlist on the speaker. Pretty soon the other new tripper, we'll call him David, realizes the place messed up his order, so we have to reorder, but we also have to wait until it's ready, meaning we'll be fully tripping when we go get the food. We're sitting there vibing when one song comes on. Hollywood Forever Cemetery sings by Father John Misty, and for those who don't know, this song revolves heavily around death, but I don't fully realize it was this song playing until I heard the line, "We should let this dead guy sleep." I figure it would be kinda weird if I skipped the song, so I waited until it finished. Then Someday by The Strokes came on and my mood instantly changes to happy again. Halfway through the song though, Sam asks me to turn the music off because it's disrupting his trip, so I oblige, but I continue the playlist privately through my AirPods. A few minutes go by, I'm deep into examining my own hand and suddenly hear a dreadful groan. Oh no. Fuck. Sam's having a bad trip and I'm tripping too hard to speak in sentences. Oh well, at least there's 4 others that can help him. Nope. At that moment the food's ready, so David, along with my roommate and his other semi-experienced friend, he'll be John, leave to get the food. I decide to stay back because someone who lives there should keep an eye on Sam, and the other semi-experienced tripper, she'll be Madison, stays as well. Sam's not having a good time at all. He's shaking his leg violently and once in a while lets out a loud groan. I'm tripping far too hard to help him in any productive way, so Madison tries to help but she can't stop staring out the window. I start spiraling and thinking about my grandparents' recent deaths, but I'm an experienced enough tripper that I know how to stop a bad trip when I feel its onset, so I start thinking about my place in society instead, leaving me to realize I've revolved a large part of my personality around different aspects of my college that won't matter next year since I'm a senior. So here we are, Sam's groaning with his head in his lap, Madison's staring out the window, and I'm having an existential crisis, also staring out the window watching the trees swirl together. Suddenly, the other half of our group busts into the room with the food, and in this exact moment, Daylight by Matt and Kim starts playing through my AirPods. It's like the gods themselves noticed our spiral and decided to send in their heavenly reinforcements. They put down the food and excitedly claim, "Guys, let's go outside. Let's go to the local park." At this point, I realize I desperately need to go outside, but I refuse to wear any college clothing due to earlier. So we go to the park. I'm listening to Mountain Sound by Of Monsters and Men while we tackle some trees with branches, and I randomly find an intact coconut. We're in New England. At this point, Sam's calmed down enough to explain how he saw way too many visions, including the end of the world, which he wouldn't elaborate on. He never said it was caused by the song, but I have no doubt in my mind it was. Whoops. Today I F up by not offering the right kind of help. I've been talking to this girl for about 2 weeks, and since we are in different cities, it was initially impossible to meet before she goes back to the US for her studies. In a surprising turn of events, she extended her stay in the country, which would mean I can catch her for a day before my vacation abroad, so we plan to meet on that day. I was surprised that she wanted a staycation, but I agreed to it since it seems fun. Let's call this Plan 1. Then as Valentine's and her birthday come close, I decided I'd like to go and spend a few days with her, to which she agreed and got us accommodation for a longer staycation. This was supposed to help today. Let's call this Plan 2. So the schedule is Plan 2 happens before Plan 1. Here's where the frick-up happens. She was having trouble booking another room for Plan 2 for the night before so that we don't have to wait for a 3 p.m. check-in when I'm arriving very early in the morning. The problem is her card was having issues. She said she contacted support and will try again later. I'm like, okay, I can book it for you if you want. She says it's okay. Later that night, she calls me asking for me to transfer money to her bank so she can try and pay for it there to see if the problem is the app or if it's her card. I said I can't because I don't have the money in my account. This account was what I had when I was in college, but my current savings account is at another bank where I did not opt for online banking because they seem to get hacked a lot, plus they require a password change like every 2 weeks as a safety measure. Anyway, here I thought the problem was with the booking app. She's contacted support, and anytime I asked she said it's fine or I'm not stressed or similar, so okay. What else can I do? I offered to book it for her with my card, but she says she doesn't want me to, so I don't. She ends the call saying she's disappointed and then gives me the silent treatment. Come morning time, I was still getting the silent treatment and I did not know why. I asked how I can make it up to her. She said there's nothing I can do. Meanwhile, she goes on about how help should be given automatically and not asked for, or else it's not help. So I was like, okay, maybe she wants me to book the place without asking her, so I did. Then she gets even more mad at me saying I did not ask for her consent. So I canceled it, it's free cancellation anyway. Now I'm confused AF. What is she mad about exactly? All of a sudden she says she doesn't want to talk to me anymore. This was literally the day before the trip, less than 24 hours to go. She asked me to call to say goodbyes. I called and asked what was up and she said she saw red flags so she's uncomfortable already. I'm like damn okay, I'm not going to push it but I'd at least like to know what I did. She then goes on to say that I did not give her the help she needed the night before. This was even more confusing since I know I tried my best and offered alternatives to which she rejected. Anytime I would explain she would be mad like, see it's always I thought or ifs and buts when I was very clear and there shouldn't be misunderstandings. It's not my fault you misunderstood what I needed. All the while I was still there thinking about what the fuck she actually wanted from me. So I asked her what she wanted or expected and she says nothing and goes on about how she needed help but I didn't give her the right kind of help. For example, if she needed water, I was giving her food. Wait, first subscribe for more Reddit stories. Now back to the story. I was still confused after, but by this time I'm super turned off by how unclear the communication is. I ask her if she 100% wants to call it off for sure, and she says yes. I don't protest or fight against it, which leads to another, if you wanted to, there would be no ifs or buts. I'm sitting there thinking, girl, I can't force you to like me if you don't want it anymore WTFL mail. I canceled my flight, the bookings were non-refundable, setting me back around $450. I feel like a dumbass. Expensive lesson learned. As it turns out what she wanted was help with her card to figure out what was wrong and not help with the booking. I don't understand why she couldn't have just clarified that, but whatever. Besides, I wouldn't know what else to do regarding that. She's already contacted support for it. It sucks that not having enough money in my one bank account is what caused all this. As a reminder, I have not maintained this account in years, but it was what I had online banking access to. It's so inactive I got 2 to 3 letters in 7 years to withdraw or deposit so they don't deactivate it lol. Today I F up by accepting a 75,000 sign-on bonus. Technically this day was about a year ago or so. But it was the start of a grand shitstorm. Irresponsibility is a serious thing you need to self-reflect on once you get financial freedom. I did not, and despite being a rather self-aware person, I fucked up bad. I mean bad. Now this is gonna sound insane and even fake to some people. But I swear to you, you can go look up the sign-on bonuses for pharmacists at Walgreens and you'll see. When I started as a pharmacist, I was given a 75,000 sign-on bonus. Yes, really, a whole fucking down payment on a house and then some. Even after taxes, I was basically looking at 50,000. And I had no debts, no loans, nothing to pay off. But boy did I fuck up in many ways. Starting with forming a rather unfortunate gambling-based hobby due to my hyperfixation as one with ADHD and other brain issues. My childhood self saw I was making good money and went, I'm gonna live out the dream, and so I bought fucking everything from MTG to Pokemon to Yu-Gi-Oh plus a PC and a ton of games. I had a serious gambling issue in the form of what was essentially cardboard crack. I bought duplicates of practically every product I opened and kept one aside saying it'll be a good return investment in the future. Unfortunately, it's an exotic investment that takes up space and time and is entirely a gamble or waiting game. And while sometimes I got cool stuff, I usually ended up having to buy the cards I wanted anyway cause ITS fucking gambling. Once I came to my senses, I lost a good amount of money. Even after selling off 90% of my sealed collection, and I'm still sorting through the mess of cards and crap I bought and finding I dislike a lot of cards artwork that I bought cause it was just FOMO from the fucking marketing. But it isn't over. I got a $3,000 PC, I got my partner a $3,000 PC, I got about 50 video games ranging from $20 to $60 a piece, I got a bunch of stupid display stuff of different characters and games and TV shows I liked, Halo, Skyrim, etc. Then my car basically fucking exploded cause it was hanging on by a thread and had 350,000 miles on it. So what do? Do I get a nice normal car? A cheaper one that's reliable? No. I buy a fucking hybrid RAV4 2023 that cost $46,000 and put $15,000 down on it. So here's the math. $15,000 for the car plus $6,000 for the computers plus $10,000 or so in shiny fucking cardboard plus $5,000 in other stupid dumb bullshit plus God knows how much in ordering food. In the end I was left with about $7,000. But wait, there's more. I was fired cause I was a stupid fucking moron. Then I have no insurance, $7,000 to my name, and end up needing to go to the ER. So there goes like 3,500 of that 7,000 and the rest goes to bills and rent. I eventually found a new job, made some good money back, and I kept my credit at around a 790 and ended up with a 17,000 in an IRA. But then the worst part happens. I have payback 70,000. Yeah, with 8% interest, mind you, I have to pay it all back plus the taxes the government took, cause I only get that back after I get a W-2C. So I have to pay my full bonus and then some back. And do I have a house or anything to show for it? Anything at all where I can at least say, well, I guess it was like a loan, at least we got something out of it. No, I don't, cause I am a fucking idiot who is paying a $70,000 loan off so that I don't get sued by a collection agency. If I wasn't paying, it'd go there. So yeah, take this however you want. Maybe it'll make you feel better. Maybe nothing at all. Maybe you can shit all over me in the comments and act like you're better than me after reading this one story. I do not care. Just make sure you plan things out and think things through and talk to people and self-reflect before you make hasty decisions. Especially as someone young looking at a lot of money. I'll never make this mistake again, and now I'm far more concerned about retirement accounts, keeping my debts paid, and saving up for life and actual tangible experiences. But why did I fuck up? Edit. I was fired due to leaving a gate open 2 inches for all of 3 minutes. AKA leaving a pharmacy unattended. You're not supposed to, though many do to some degree. I unfortunately before that had an auto-locking door, just not fully locked for some reason. By all purposes it was closed, but because it didn't actually close and someone was able to access the vaccine room, it was considered unlocked. So yeah, first time was the faulty door, got written up. I think that's a load of crap since it's an auto-locking door that no one would ever bother to even check, as it's a non-vital door as it only leads to a vaccine area. But the second time I absolutely did the ring thing and fucked up there. That was on me. Edit 2. I am not trying to use the ADHD or disabilities I have as an excuse, it's simply an explanation to why it happened, executive dysfunction. I am still the one at fault. My illnesses just made it a bit easier for me to end up here is all compared to others, since it messes with my ability to organize, think, retain memories, and my brain's actual development. Edit 3. If you really think you can judge a person's character entirely based on one post on the internet, you're just as dumb as I was. Sure, yeah, judge me for the post, I definitely fucked up, but I'm not a bad pharmacist and I know that. I'm bad at remembering to lock things or take things home with me and finances. My clinical knowledge is still there and I'll stand by that. People are not this two-dimensional. You know nothing else about me, you have no idea what it's like being a pharmacist, you have no idea what my life is like, but if it makes you feel better, pop off, I guess. Tofu being my friend's backup during his breakup. Earlier in the week, my friend asked me to be his sidekick when he realized his ex-GF was coming to his apartment to collect her belongings following their recent breakup. I didn't really know my friend's ex because she made no effort to get to know me and she never allowed me to get to know her. However, based on all the horror stories I've heard from my friend, I knew his ex was crazy. The special kind of crazy that prompted my friend to call me for backup because he refused to be alone with his ex. My friend was hoping that my presence as a witness or whatever would reduce the risk of his ex losing her shit and damaging his apartment as a final fuck you, but little did my friend and I know that his ex would end up targeting our friendship instead. I was playing online games on my friend's Xbox when I noticed his ex entering the apartment. As per the plan, I made sure I was at my friend's place prior to her arrival. I greeted her, she greeted me, and then I continued gaming while she followed my friend to the room where all her stuff was stored. I was wearing headphones while gaming, so I missed the beginning of the drama that was unfolding in the background, but I gradually started hearing commotion that became loud enough for me to realize that my friend was arguing with his ex. The two of them were verbally attacking at each other in my presence. When I asked what the fuck was going on, my friend said his ex was bragging about sleeping with me during their relationship. I made it as clear as possible that I never had sex with her. My friend seemed convinced that his ex was making shit up to get under his skin. My friend's ex made my friend aware that she enjoyed eating my ass and kissing him afterwards. I said no one ate my ass. My friend laughed in his ex's face and said no wonder she was so fucking good at using her mouth to talk shit. My friend's ex said she was even better at using her mouth to make me cum, before adding that my cum never gave her recurring acid reflux. Unlike the xenomorph blood my friend pumped into her mouth every time he came during oral. My friend asked his ex if she was crazy enough to expect him to believe that she had been hooking up with me behind his back when she has never expressed an ounce of interest in getting to know any of his friends while they were together. My friend's ex said she expressed much more than an ounce of interest in getting to know my dick. My friend instructed his ex to leave his apartment, which she did, but not before she apologized to me for always leaving bite marks on my butt. I ran out of responses, so I just shrugged. As soon as my friend's ex was gone, my friend gave me the "bro, I told you she was crazy" speech before thanking me for teaming up with him. I was prepared to move on, but my friend wanted to get something off of his chest. He wanted me to know that if something happened between me and his ex, then he would encourage me to come clean. I said nothing happened. My friend nodded without saying anything. It looked like he was conflicted, so I asked him if he was actually entertaining the idea that I had sex with his ex. He laughed like he was trying to disguise his discomfort and asked if it was okay if he could ask me a weird question. I said ask away. He asked if I was willing to show him my butt. I pulled down my pants and said no bite marks. My friend said, anymore. I pulled up my pants and asked my friend if he was gonna trust the word of an ex-GF who he clearly thought was out of her mind over the word of his friend who he trusted enough to have his back if his ex did anything crazy. My friend hugged me and said he was gonna need time to get his ex out of his head and process what he was feeling, but in the meantime it would be best if we distanced ourselves. I left my friend's apartment feeling like my friend just broke up with me too. I almost feel like if I lied and said something did happen, then maybe, just maybe, my friend might have been more accepting because telling him the truth has done nothing good for me so far. Next time a friend calls me to be his backup during a breakup, I'll hang up. Update: Tofu being my friend's backup during his breakup. Update asterisk. My friend and his ex-GF somehow managed to reconcile and resurrect their relationship. I've taken showers that lasted longer than their so-called breakup. My friend was proud to tell me about his rekindled romance in person and in the company of his ex-GF. The three of us were back in my friend's apartment where it all went wrong not so long ago. It was bizarre. My friend and his GF appeared to be madly in love again and wanted me to understand that peace had been restored in their relationship. Both of them were very apologetic about what happened to me during their breakup and very excited to make me a peace offering in the form of an invitation to get high with them. I asked when and where and what were we taking. The when was last night. The where was my friend's apartment. The what was magic mushrooms. I learned that my friend's GF was actually the one who suggested that we reconnect with the help of recreational drug use, which was out of character for her because she never made an effort to get to know me before, much less get high with me. But there we were, tripping and talking and enjoying the vibe. My friend's reaction to the shrooms was constant laughter, whereas me and his GF had a more visual experience. The two of us often stared at each other and explained what we were seeing when we focused on the other person's face. I described how I could see her hair growing in front of my eyes while she described how abnormally big my mouth was compared to my face. I asked my friend's GF if she was aware that my friend made me show him my butt to confirm whether or not she might have used her teeth to mark her territory on my ass when we were supposedly hooking up in secret. My friend's GF acted like she was totally shocked to hear that information and asked me if my friend did a thorough inspection to check for the bite marks. My friend, who was still laughing his ass off for no reason, jumped in at that point to remind his GF that she apparently promised him that she would never bring up the bite marks on the butt and the cheating stuff again, especially not in front of me. My friend's GF fired back by reminding my friend that she didn't bring it up. I did, which made me feel compelled to awkwardly raise my hand and take the blame for bringing up the bite marks. My friend said he was keeping an eye on me. It was unclear at the time if he was warning me or teasing me because, like I said, he was laughing, almost to the point of crying, so it was difficult to distinguish between silly and serious. That being said, the following morning, which is now where I'm from, my friend made it easier for me to understand how he was feeling. He called me to explain how challenging it was for him to watch me with his GF. He was referring to all the moments when his GF was looking at me and I was looking at her while we were all tripping. He said he realized that he actually preferred the way it used to be when his GF wanted nothing to do with his friends because now he was unable to shake the feeling that something happened between us, even though the two people who supposedly cheated confirmed that it never happened. I asked my friend what he wanted me to do, and he said he wanted me to tell him what happened when he passed out last night. I said I continued to talk to his GF until the shrooms were out of my system, and then I went home. The end. My friend asked me how I would feel if I was in his position. I said I would never be in his position because I would avoid getting back together with a girl who was hellbent on sabotaging our friendship out of spite. And that was just a week ago. My friend hung up the phone before I could continue. I thought the call disconnected, so I called back, but my friend refused to answer. Based on all the unread messages I've sent since then, I'm assuming he's ghosting me. I feel like I must have fucked up again? I'm not exactly sure how though. From now on, I'm gonna play it safe and stay the fuck away from my friend's GF for as long as I'm alive because nothing good comes from breathing the same air as her. My fiancé cheated with several men, including a sex offender, so I took my revenge. I met my ex in 2012, right after I had just turned 30. I had only dated and been with women exclusively until I came out as bisexual at 28. Let's just say the year I was 29 was a busy year making up for what I missed out on. It was mostly casual hookups, yes, safe, and I did try dating 2 different guys for a few weeks, but it just never worked out or got serious. I kind of figured that I'd probably end up marrying a woman or not getting married at all because I just didn't see myself catching romantic and sexual feelings for a guy. Then I met Ryan. From the first date, it was just like the only other time in my life I had fallen in love, butterflies, constantly thinking about him, wanting to spend every moment with him. He fell for me hard too, and we became an item, though he did say while he considered my bisexuality a turn-on because he had a thing for straight guys, it also gave him pause because of my desires for the opposite sex and his concern it may lead me astray. I thought about it and understood it was a legitimate worry, but assured him that I couldn't even think about anyone else because I was really into him. Note, I knew he was the one by the end of the first month and I was in love, but I wasn't going to say these things too soon and risk scaring him off. On our first date, he admitted to me that he was legally blind due to a genetic disorder and that it was progressive and eventually he would only have a sliver of his peripheral vision. He immediately said he understood if I didn't want to see him again because no other guy had wanted to date him and be his driver all of the time. I grew up with a brother in a wheelchair who never learned how to walk or talk due to misdiagnosed meningitis at 6 months old back in the 70s. I told him that and said that what my brother had was a severe disability, so in my perspective, his blindness had no effect in my feelings and that always being the driver was a small sacrifice just to be with him. The following years were bliss. We brought out the best in each other. My family, who was surprised but very supportive when I came out, adored Ryan and treated him like family and said that I acted happier since we'd been together. When I met him, he was working part-time in retail and had done very poorly in high school because he lost a lot of his confidence as his vision deteriorated. I told him that one thing I did insist on was that he do something with his life because he had too much to offer and that I would help. He said that he'd wanted to be a teacher but didn't think someone with limited vision could teach nonsense. So I put him through community college for 2 years, then 2.5 years of a local university, and finally the 1-year teacher certification program as required by California. I drove countless miles and paid hundreds in public transportation costs for him, never blinking an eye or complaining. We'd been together for 7.5 years and were engaged to be married in October by the time he was in his last semester of his teaching certification, which involved him student teaching at his former high school with his favorite teacher from his days in school. Then the pandemic hit and schools closed. Fortunately, he'd had enough hours in the classroom that he would still qualify to be certified after the governor issued a waiver via executive order. On the 3rd day of the stay-at-home order in March, my life crumbled when I innocently found out he had cheated on me with an ex, all because he handed his phone to me to show me something on Instagram. I accidentally fat-thumbed the back arrow when he gave it to me, taking me back to a list of all his messages. I looked and recognized the name of his ex as the second message, dated a week ago. I clicked on it and my heart sank. Directions to my house, pictures, dirty talk, and reassuring him not to worry about me because he had my location on my Find My Friends, just in case I came home from work. I immediately started screaming, demanding to know everything, and he admitted to having his ex over twice for sex and that they didn't use protection. His ex was engaged to his GF during this, adding another victim. Then he admitted to sleeping with his straight but curious recently single cousin, by marriage, twice, again no protection. Finally, he admitted to sleeping with a supposedly straight guy he and many of my cousins went to school with, who I told Ryan I really didn't like him or want them talking because I didn't trust him after what I'd read about him. Since they were never close friends, I didn't feel like this was a big sacrifice or that I was being too controlling, and I assumed that he knew why I and all my cousins felt that way but didn't bother repeating it. The reason was after high school at age 20, this guy was convicted of sexual assault and penetration with a foreign object against a 16-year-old girl and had gone to jail and required to register as a sex offender for life. Apparently, my ex was the only person in his graduating class that hadn't heard that news. All of this happened in my home while I was working. We spent the whole weekend crying, with me asking over and over why and him repeatedly crying and saying he just didn't know and that he felt terrible. Monday comes around and anger started being as common as sadness, and I made a comment that said I was going to pull all the phone records going back the 3 years that AT&T kept them for a fee. Only when he heard that did he admit to one more guy. Some random named Frankie off the gay hookup app Grindr, who was the first guy he cheated with and continued to casually hook up with for nearly 2 years, with the last time being in February, the month before. He told me how it started. Get this, it was the day after his graduation with his BA in May 2018, and he was drunk from celebrating and wanted to have sex. I too had been celebrating with him and said I was too drunk to perform and said I'd make it up the next day, then passed out asleep on the couch. Apparently he was angry horny because he downloaded Grindr, chatted with this Frankie fellow, and arranged to have sex in his car in a church parking lot across the street from our condo, which happens to be across the street from a school. This fact is important later, all while I slept on the couch. All the times they hooked up after that was again in my condo while I was working or visiting a friend for the night up the coast. He used to love going but started saying he couldn't occasionally because of homework and studying. I absolutely lost it, told him to get in the car, and I drove him to his family's house so he could tell them what he did so they understood why he was moving back into their house. While he was in the house, I was in the driveway on the phone with AT&T ordering the 3 years worth of detailed call/text logs, then made an appointment to be screened for STIs. I suspended his service until he could figure out how to pay for his own damn phone, then I temporarily changed all his passwords on the social media accounts he cheated with, and to make sure he couldn't hide more evidence so only I would have access to his cloud. We shared each other's passwords on his suggestions years before. I also called the bank and issued a stop payment on his final tuition check that I had sent to the certification program the week before and hadn't hit the bank yet. Before deleting his social media, except Facebook, I took screenshots of the entire Instagram conversation with his ex and mailed the conversation to his fiancée, who deserved to know so she could see a doctor and get tested too. His family was very religious and had kicked him out in high school for 3 days when he tried to admit he was bi, and only took him back in when he took it back. Needless to say, she ended it, he got kicked out. One down. He came back out to the car and we went home. I took his house key and told him to say goodbye to our 3 pets and get packing. The entire time he packed, I studied those phone records to find out dates, times, and if there was anyone else he was leaving out. He answered every question I asked, and it was then that I discovered that the sex offender and he had only had oral sex in my home, and that the actual sex was in the same parking lot he screwed the Frankie guy in. The wheels started turning, and the next day I walked over to the church and sure enough spotted a camera. I spoke to a secretary, sweet old lady, at the church and informed them about a registered sex offender having sex in their lot, and that not only was it a violation of his parole for indecent exposure, but that he was not allowed to be that close to a school, and I provided the date. I was in luck. They had a digital 2-year loop system that started deleting day by day after it had been retained for 2 years. It was April 2020 and he first cheated with Frankie in May 2018, and the sex offender was in April 2019. I told them I was filing a police report and that probation would require a copy of it eventually. They said they would save the file and allowed me a thumb drive of both days to submit with my police report. Within a month, the sex offender was locked up again. 2 down. I also filed a police report against the Frankie guy. The police said it was a relatively minor infraction, but since it was across from a school playground and skate park, they would follow up, but there would be no jail time. I researched the hell out of Frankie and called him to confront him. He was smug and admitted to knowing about me the whole time. What he didn't know is that I had found out he had a job that required a security clearance, and he had several judgments against him, and collection agencies had been looking for him. Best dollar I ever spent on a data collection site like Verified. I didn't know why they couldn't find him and just garnish his wages, but it ends up he was Hispanic and had 2 last names and was a junior, plus he frequently by his middle name Francisco, Frankie for short. So he got lost in the paperwork confusion. I sent a letter to the collection agencies providing his employer and current location and contact info, and then sent a copy of the police report about misdemeanor indecent exposure, for which he pled guilty, and it was a fine with community service. Not considered a sex crime. His wages did get garnished, but only for 2 paychecks because the misdemeanor was enough for him to lose his security clearance and get fired. 3 down. Then I contacted Ryan's family on his mother's side, pretending to be him from his Facebook account, making sure they knew he had fucked his cousin. It spread through the family like wildfire, and soon his cousin was contacting me because he couldn't get a hold of Ryan to ask why he would expose what they did. I just laughed and said you shouldn't screw your cousins, especially when they're engaged, and that he'd messed around in my house, so now it was my turn for payback. For down. Lastly, I had already stopped payment, but since he was so close to finishing, I was sure his family would bail him out and pay the university. Like I said, indecent exposure is usually a slap on the wrist type misdemeanor. However, I remembered some of the paperwork he signed to be a mandated reporter that you could lose teaching certification for documented acts of moral turpitude. I sent a copy of both police reports from the parking lot with still shots from the security footage clearly showing Ryan's face to the school district he'd been student teaching in, and a copy to the Commission on Teacher Credentials. Fifth and final down. Admittedly, I did all this out of anger, but he shattered my sense of self-worth and made me incredibly bitter and untrusting after years of being generous and supporting him. Everywhere I looked in the town, I thought of Ryan and the cheating. I felt a terrible energy in my condo knowing it all happened there. I stayed 9 months and watched all 5 of their lives self-destruct. Then sold my condo, making a nice profit, and relocated to the PNW to start over. One thing that is sad is I found out just recently that his ex, whose fiancée broke up with him, ended up committing suicide several months after I moved. It is too bad that his family was so closed-minded to turn on their own son, but in the end, it's not my fault that he cheated on his fiancée by coming into my home at my fiancée's invitation to cheat. Suicide is never the answer to one's problems, and I hope the fiancée he cheated on doesn't blame herself and that only his family does, as they should. TLDR, I emotionally and financially supported my ex through college and his teacher credential program for over 7 years, only to discover he had cheated on me with 4 different guys. One of them the day after he graduated, and then occasionally for nearly 2 years in my home while I was at work. I took my revenge. My ex lost his career before it even started, and our relationship, one AP, affair partner, lost his job and had bill collectors after him, another lost his fiancée and was kicked out. A third was humiliated when his entire family found out he had sex with his cousin, and the fourth was put in jail for violating probation. Lesson: don't cheat and deceive or fuck around and find out.